three builds that are dominating, or at the very least trending, in the meta game of 3.23 Affliction League of Path of Exile. My friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Gyro, and today we're taking a look at these builds by three very popular creators that drew my attention. They're certainly drawing a lot of views and a lot of attention from the crowd, so I thought I'm gonna very quickly recap these builds for you, tell you what appears to be good about them, what appears to be a little bit of a deterrent for beginners and for casuals, so that you don't have to go through those three different long videos. Instead, you can watch my relatively short one condensed one. If you like this kind of format, I'm slightly changing the visuals and everything. Please give me a like, because that's the only way for me to know that you prefer it to the previous formats from me. Plus, you see the gameplay. You complained about gameplay. I hear you, my friend. I'm not ignoring you. And before we go on, I can tell you that I'm very proud that this video is sponsored by the lovely people at Into the AM, very talented group of graphic designers who watched my videos and said, Gyro, why do you look so boring? Why do you wear boring stuff? And they're right. So they sent me these very cool printed tees. Some of them that I will be showing off to you in the next few videos as well. I love this one. I love a few others. They have a lot of different prints. The quality is amazing. I really enjoy this. So I very much appreciate that they contributed to my channel, basically sprucing up the look in the early 2024. So my link with the discount code is in the description for you to get yourself some of these tees. And when we talk about, I don't know, staff being featured in one of the builds that I'm about to talk to you about, you will see why I'm interested in staves, don't you? Well, there you go. There's an extra insight about Gyro that you would not have seen before. That's an added benefit to you, my friend. Now, onto the builds, my friends. The first build that I'd like to bring to your attention is the Fulcrum Self-Ignite Magic Find by Crouching Tuna. It's a complex build, and explanation is even more complex, even though I very much respect Crouching Tuna as a creator, which is why it prompted me kind of to explain to you very quickly why you should look at this. Alright, so the Fulcrum Self-Ignite Magic Find becomes accessible to you as a build, not as a league starter. It certainly is not a league starter, let's not delude ourselves. It is definitely a league finisher, as I referred to it in some previous leagues and videos and my reviews. What does it mean? It means that by the time when the meta game has settled in the league, and by the time of the league, middle league / ending of the league, a lot of necessary uniques, a lot of resources are more available to players, even to relative beginners and even to casuals. You would have a little bit more currency. You should be able to go to the marketplace and buy something such as the Fulcrum stuff that we'll be talking about in a second, relatively cheaply. So that is why it's not a league starter. At the start of the league, you simply will not have access to these things. So how does this work? Well, this works by relying on inflicting elemental ailments such as the Ignite on the enemies, then reflecting these ailments onto yourself, and basically becoming this, as Crouching Tuna explains in his longer video, becoming this ignition catalyst, like this massive ignite thing by yourself. However, because it's a chieftain ascendancy that we're looking at here, the chieftain ascendancy gives you a notable basically key point that you can spend there in the ascendancy, which gives you an effect of being unaffected by ignite. So ignites get inflicted onto enemies, reflected onto you, but then it does nothing to you. However, all the benefits of creating this massive damage, radiating this ignition damage onto the enemies, essentially is still there. That's in a nutshell what this build is about. The good thing about it is that it looks like indeed a very fun, really awesome mapper, so farmer, kind of a farmer. So white mobs are gonna just explode all around you, and you'll be able to run through pretty high level maps in Path of Exile, but at the same time you'd be able to get a lot of currency, a lot of items, whatever it is you need, whatever it is that is. However, Crouching Tuna himself says in this video that it is not a boss killer. It is definitely not a single target type of damage build. Yeah, it's not a bosser. Yeah, so once again, relies on the baseline 5% chance to explode of the enemies, dealing 50% of enemy life as fire damage, and and the Primalist Ascendancy, the specifics of the Affliction League 3.23, also gives you a specific way to increase the explosion chance by another 3%. So you increasing the explosion chances, that's how this build works. If I sold it to you so far, not saying that I'm doing a better job than Crouching Tuna, but I certainly condensed the information about this build for you. So that's when you should consider this build. On to the second one. Maybe you will like it more. Just bear with me, okay? This one is apparently a rework or of a very classic, even nostalgic, according to the creator, for him build that is a cast on CoC Vortex assassin by one of my favorite creators in Path of Exile building community, Subtractem. So he said that it makes him very nostalgic, this build. This was apparently the first build that he ever created and all that kind of stuff. Well, credit to him where it's due. He says that it gave him a feeling of being very smooth and fun to play, arcadey and really fun PoE playstyle. There are lots of different playstyles, and I love PoE, and you love PoE, otherwise you wouldn't be playing it. But this apparently offers you that relatively unique perspective. Okay, so this build is powered essentially by cast on CoC Cyclone synergy, yeah, triggering powerful spells. Essentially, that's how this thing works. So there is a Cyclone build, there is a Cyclone skill that is not doing the damage itself, but it is linked to the Awakened cast on crit. Awakened in this case simply because it gives extra increased chance, crit chance, and the cooldown recovery rate, which is great. Yeah, and then that Awakened cast on crit is powering the Ice Nova of Frost Bolts, which is a transfigured gem in this particular case. Do you have to have Ice Nova specifically of Frost Bolts? Well, you would have to watch the whole video, but that gives you a rough idea of what to expect. So the build relies on a particular unique, which again makes it not a league starter. It makes it a league finisher or mid-league meta settled kind of situation, just like with the first build in this lineup. It is powered by charms. Once again, charms are part of that affliction mechanic, which we can speculate is not going to be available to us, obviously, in the next league 324, let's say, yeah, and beyond. So 323 is when this will work, or supposed to work, according to Subtractem. There are also, as Subtractem says, there are broken uniques, rather broken uniques that are powering this build, which he lists quite generously, quite well in his build. So if you are ready with cash in hand, some orbs there saved by now, and you're ready to, for the sake of having this playstyle that's demonstrated to you on the screen, if you would like to buy a few uniques off the marketplace, it certainly is not a solo self-found kind of build, it's certainly not a league starter once again. Yeah, that build is for you. I hope, again, I highlighted at least some things about it. If this sounds like your cup of tea, the link to the video of Subtractem and my recommendation is with it in the description of this video. And finally, build number 3 today. For today, we are going to wrap up this video with Kinetic Bolt build by Kinetic Bolt Deadeye by Big Ducks. Big Ducks is another great creator. I love his demeanor, I love how chilled he is, and I used a few builds of his in the past. My special particular favorite still remains many leagues on is his totemic build, which was the Forbidden Rite totems. Like I took this build from him, and that's what I thought, you know what, mate, I really like your builds. So one thing he straight away says to you, that this is a very, very PC demanding build. So you're gonna play at 5 FPS and even on a strong rig, on a rather strong rig. So straight away, if your rig is not particularly strong, this build is not for you. You don't need to watch further. But if you have a pretty strong rig with a good graphics processor, with a good graphics card and a lot of RAM, well, maybe it is good. Okay, so he also relies, unsurprisingly, on the Affliction League mechanic on 323. He is playing as Warden of the Magi, yeah, and uses tinctures. This build uses tinctures. It is ultimately relies on the certain broken mechanic, again, as a lot of these creators are utilizing in meta these days, that allows you to scale spell damage beyond belief. So you invest into boosting your spell damage as much as you can, and then how do you scale it? Well, you scale it with the help of returning projectiles support gem. Yeah, so he uses two skills. He uses Kinetic Bolt for clear, and he uses Kinetic Blast for single target. And then he says that one rather broken support gem is Sniper's Mark, just a good old Sniper's Mark. So Sniper's Mark, apparently, when it interacts with the target, it makes the projectile split from the target that it hits, causing a massive explosion on the screen, essentially a massive explosion of damage. Some apparently splitting steel builds are using the same mechanic, expecting the kind of fragments to fly in every direction from basically the target that it hits, creating this multitude of projectiles, and returning projectiles are doing even more damage. So essentially a little bit rambly, but there is a lot to say, I suppose, and I don't pretend to be an expert on this build, but it definitely drew my attention, and this simplifies to you the expectations. So you will need to be a Warden of the Magi, you will need to scale your spell damage, and you will need to rely on these two abilities in order to create that processor and rig melting experience for your PC. And that's it, my friends. So there are three things these three builds are currently trending on YouTube at the moment of recording of this video. The audience and people who are playing Path of Exile are clearly very interested in those, at least as the meta has settled towards the middle, towards the second half, very much second half of this Affliction League. It's not too late for you to try something different to Tornado Shot that a lot of people who are at least uploading their profiles to PoE Ninja seem to still crushing in terms of numbers, in terms of popularity, any other build with. So we are not even going to stop on Tornado Shot today. Don't worry, that would be just boring, wouldn't it? And that's it. That's it. Hopefully one of these three builds is going to make your life as a Path of Exile player towards the middle, towards the end of the league, a little bit more fun. I'm certainly going to try at least one of those. And my plan currently is to continue coming to you at least once a month with the summary of the best trending builds for Path of Exile as we move on and as the next league gets announced, and so on and so forth, because I love Path of Exile and I love interacting with my crowd of people who are playing this awesome game. I hope you liked it. Please, please do not leave without leaving me a like, because that is your main way of telling me, yeah, you like this particular content, Gyro, do more of that content. And again, once again, welcome to my new sponsors into the AM, to this channel, and for sponsoring the video, for these awesome tees that they sent to me. There are lots of awesome prints. If this is not your style, I'm sure you'll find some of yours. So please check the description for the link and the discount code for you. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this. Happy New Year if it's the first video you're watching from me in 2024, and I'll talk to you next time.